Guys, one thing you've told me millions of times when you add it all up is don't you wish old Donnie would go away and shut up? Don't you wish that? And of course, my answer to that is yes, just like it is for you. But you know who's also saying that right now, this morning/afternoon? His own attorneys, because Trump just made one of the most incriminating statements he's ever done, and he put it in writing, and it's happening at the same time that things are heating up in New York. And make no mistake, the Mar-a-Lago investigation is connected to both the civil and criminal ones in New York. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, because some of the documents they found, like the non-classified documents that were found by the feds when they went in, Letitia James and Alvin Bragg have both said that those documents have pertinent financial information of interest to investigators. So we'll talk about potential breakthroughs in New York, but also how this connects directly to Donald Trump and the system of classification, and how his disrespect for that system has put him in greater criminal trouble than ever before. What he just admitted to was maybe his most stone-cold criminal admission in this entire saga. Listen to this and we'll break it all down.
The Attorney General says it is. Does this make it harder to indict Donald Trump for obstruction or other possible crimes involved with keeping the classified documents for more than a year, not turning them over, his lawyer not being, forthcoming on an affidavit? Does that make it harder?
So legally, no. I think that prosecutors compare cases with similarities and differences all the time. Sometimes there is the presence of criminal intent in the same kind of business transaction as another, and prosecutors are able to keep the two separate in their heads and charge those that have criminal aspects to them and decline charges in other kinds of cases. But I think you raise a very good point about the way this legal issue has become intertwined in politics. And I do think it's going to make it very important for whoever charges this case to be able to distinguish the two cases. Because one of the things prosecutors have to think about is litigation risk. If you file criminal charges, you want to believe that there is a high likelihood that you can obtain and sustain a conviction. And if there is public skepticism about the charge, that it is simply based on politics, then that risk goes up exponentially. But I think a way to distinguish the two cases still revolves around the idea of obstruction of justice. It appears that there may be evidence that Donald Trump obstructed justice when he failed to comply with the subpoena and lied by saying that all documents had been returned when there were still more than 20 boxes in his basement at Mar-a-Lago. That's very different from the case of Joe Biden, who also retained classified materials, but gave them up as soon as he discovered them, it appears, and did not make any effort to obstruct the investigation. So that's where the cases differ, and that's where prosecutors would make the difference in the legal case, and I think in the case, in the court of public opinion.
Just a matter of dumping all those documents in burn bags. I think it's trickier for a president or vice president who obviously have far more documents in their offices, in their residences, than I did as a White House official. And so clearly what happened here is something went wrong in the process of packing up those documents. Documents got co-located, and they could have been co-located, by the way, at any time. It might have happened months before things were packed up. A memo gets put in the wrong place here. And I think the important thing to keep in mind in terms of the differences here, too, is the integrity of the classification system really matters. You want to send a message to people to take this seriously, to not take stuff where they shouldn't be, to not take documents that are meant to be in secure facilities outside of those secure facilities. And I think President Trump, in essentially ignoring a request to return these documents, was essentially challenging the basis of that entire system. The rules don't need to apply to me. Whereas with President Biden, clearly there was a mistake made, but the instinct was to say, no, I respect the integrity of the system. I'm going to give this stuff back. But yes, clearly mistakes were made in the packing up of those offices.
Yeah. Joining us on the phone right now is Michael Cohen. He just last hour finished meeting with investigators at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. He's the author of Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice Against His Critics. Michael, what'd you talk about?
Hi, Nicole. How are you? And to your panel. Unfortunately, and of course, all of you three members of your panel fully understand that the district attorney has asked me not to go into the sum and substance of the conversation and the questions. That, of course, would only benefit one person, and that, of course, would be Donald Trump, and I have no interest in doing that. Neither do they. All I can say is it was a very productive meeting. I don't suspect that it's going to be the last either, and I think Alvin Bragg is, as just stated by Harry, I think he's seriously looking at this case on several different grounds.
Michael, you had spent time with Mark Pomerantz. There were two incredibly skilled prosecutors looking at this who thought it was chargeable and prosecutable. Do you have a better understanding of why they left after today?
So again, it teeters on the promise that I made to the DA that I would not go into, the sum and substance of our conversation today, other than to say that the team that I met with today are incredibly professional, and they are no different than Mark Pomerantz and Carrie Dunn. They are true professionals and very knowledgeable in this area.
Did anyone ask you anything that surprised you?
Well, nothing, of course, surprises me because, unfortunately, I lived through it. So this is also something that I have covered extensively, not just in Disloyal, but now, as you brought up, Revenge. It's been discussed before 8 different congressional committees. This would now be my 14th time meeting with the district attorney's office. And like I said, they are a truly professional team.
Michael, I want to help you respect the prerogatives of the prosecutors you met with today. But this is an office that made such an unsound decision in the eyes of the last prosecutors that were looking at this, that they quit in a very high-profile split with Alvin Bragg at the beginning of his tenure. Do you have a better understanding, even if you won't share it with us, that there's been an about-face from Bragg?
Well, I don't think they would have called me in today and spent the 3 hours or so that we did if there wasn't an interest in re-examining, I suspect, many of the things that both Mark Pomerantz and Carrie Dunn had outlined approximately a year ago.
So in that first one, we see the bombshell news that broke yesterday, which is that Bragg finally called in Michael Cohen. As we know, he was working, Cohen, who has all the dirt on Trump, used to be one of Trump's cronies. The guy is really doing his best to make amends and frankly help take Donald Trump down. And he's done a lot of work with Letitia James on the civil case, and she thanked him when she announced the civil charges against Trump, the company, his family, all of that. She thanked Michael Cohen, and deservedly so. But he hasn't really had a relationship with the criminal investigation into Trump. That's being done by Alvin Bragg, and of course, unfortunate as it's been up until now, it's really slowed down, but that's picking up. And we have to remember that you can't disconnect the Mar-a-Lago stuff from the rest of this video from that story, because Letitia James has noted, for example, in court, that documents found by the FBI when they went into the home and they produced the inventory almost certainly include tax info and financial info about Trump and his company, which have to be pertinent to any criminal charges based on financial stuff or civil charges based on financial stuff. But that second part not only reiterates that there's criminal intent from Trump but not from Biden, but also that central to the Trump scandal, beyond the criminality, is his disrespect for the classification system. And what he just did today was admit to a crime, or at the very least, admit that he has no respect for the classification system. He's trying to argue that he never stole any classified documents and that he just took the folders, that all of the empty folders didn't actually have any classified documents in them, but were simply cool keepsakes. That's literally verbatim from Trump. It says here, remember, those were just ordinary, inexpensive folders with various words printed on them, but they were a cool keepsake. Perhaps the Gestapo took some of these empty folders when they raided Mar-a-Lago and counted them as a document, which they are not. It is also possible that the Trump-hating Marxist thugs in charge will plant documents while they're in possession of the material. As president and based on the Presidential Records Act in Sock's case, I did nothing wrong, Joe did. Now, experts are saying this is ridiculous for a few reasons. One, they don't just take the documents out of the folders. Like, they don't just do that. They don't just leave the folders behind. I understand that, a classified folder that's empty is less important than one that's full. I get that. But, top secret information is very managed, and they probably keep folders together with the documents in them as an organizational thing and as a security thing. I doubt, Trump would be left with dozens of folders without things in them. One or two? Maybe. Dozens? There's no way. Listen to this clip from Glenn Kirshner, which is great because this is from a few months ago, explaining how absurd it would be that Trump just had empty folders as a memento or something.
Yeah, I can't imagine Trump said, here's what I want you all to pack up at the White House. I'm going to need you to take those 43 empty folders that used to contain classified information. I'm going to need you to take those 28 empty folders that say on them, return to staff secretary / military aid. I'm going to need you to deliver all of those to my office proper. In case anybody wonders if it was my office, I've named it 45 office. And Brian, that's just some of the empty classified documents folders that were found at Mar-a-Lago. There were also several found in a storage facility across multiple boxes. Nobody packages up empty classified documents folders to move them to their new digs. This is about it went from bad to worse to extraordinarily dangerous for our national security.
And we jump to today, where two experts are saying that this incriminates Trump and that this is very implausible. First, you have Joyce Vance when she says, if charged, this is an admission of admissible evidence against Trump. It's why lawyers want their clients to stay silent when there's the possibility of a criminal investigation, aka Trump lawyers want them to shut the hell up. Biden likely had conflicting advice from his lawyers who wanted radio silence and advisors who wanted transparency. And then Ryan Goodman, another expert, notes, another criminating admission ? In True Social post, former President Trump claims he held on to empty classified folders as a cool keepsake. Would be an admission he knew they were there, 46 of them, notably found alongside 103 marked classified. This proves Trump knew the documents. He knew them. If the argument from Trump is going to be in court at some point that things were planted and that he didn't know and his advisors just packed up a bunch of boxes and they ended up there by accident and that he gave them all back, but he thought he gave them all back, but there was a mistake made and there was some stuff left over, and trying to say that it was more negligence than malice. Well, we now know that Donald Trump purposely kept 46 folders as quote unquote cool keepsakes, and he kept them not in a separate space from the secret documents, like he kept them out in the open, because he honestly was treating them like cool keepsakes, like they were like on his wall so his friends could see. He kept them with the actual secret stuff he wasn't supposed to have. If he knew he had these cool keepsakes, then he knew he had the actual classified stuff he wasn't supposed to have. And of course, I don't believe it. I think those empty folders, more likely than being cool keepsakes, is that what was in them is now gone to some shady foreign dictator or something. We don't have evidence of that, but it's far more likely than his story. Donald Trump incriminated himself yet again. My goodness, guys, it keeps on getting better. Because remember, even just having these is still theft of government property. What was in them and Trump took out of them, my goodness, that could be worse.